If you like sci-fi and action as much as I do, then let me introduce you to your new best friend. It's time to grab your flamethrowers and shift into overdrive because The Hidden is next. So I hadn't even heard of The Hidden until this little movie right here, Shakedown with Peter Weller and Sam Elliott. There's a scene where Sam Elliott's coming out of this theater and The Hidden is up on the marquee. And I'm like, hey, that sounds kind of cool. What is that? And so I looked into it. And it makes sense because Shakedown came out in 88, so it would have been filmed in late 87 when The Hidden was released. But yeah, other than that, I hadn't heard of this movie, and I kind of feel cheated by the gods of cinema for never hearing of this movie before. So this movie was directed by Jack Shoulder, who you might know from Nightmare on Elm Street 2, which I recently reviewed on this channel. He also did the original Alone in the Dark with Donald Pleasance. So it stars Kyle MacLachlan, who you might know from the show Twin Peaks and the original Dune. He stars as FBI agent Gallagher, and he plays this alien who's taken over Gallagher's body, and he's posing as this agent, trying to hunt down this insect-like creature who gets inside of a human host and just becomes debaucherous and does whatever it wants to do. It's basically on holiday here in our world. It also stars Michael Nouri as Detective Beck for the LAPD. You might know him from Flashdance and Footloose. And it was kind of neat. Jack Shoulder said in the documentary that he always wondered why Michael Nouri wasn't more of a big deal. And he said once he worked with him, he found out he was really kind of difficult to work with, which I think works well with this movie because he's the doubting Thomas to McLaughlin's character who's, trying to get this alien. But FBI agent Gallagher is after this alien because it killed not only his partner, but also his wife and his little girl. And he's been chasing it across time and space for 9 years, our time. But together they're trying to hunt down this alien, and it is just awesome. It's kind of like an alien playing a real life Grand Theft Auto, and so it's robbing banks and killing people, shooting up places, stealing Ferraris, and getting in high speed chases with the cops. It's just awesome. Hitting old men in wheelchairs at like 80 miles an hour, and that scene just had me in tears laughing. But they really have a hard time catching this thing because it can swap bodies. It'll use a body up until that body just completely dies off, and then it has a finite amount of time to find another host to get into. So over the course of this movie, this parasite jumps into 7 different bodies, including that of a dog. And they only have this small window to kill it and one single weapon to kill it with because our weapons won't work on it. So as far as what I liked about the movie, it starts off in grand fashion. There's this bank robbery taking place, and it's done through a surveillance camera, which is kind of a cool effect. And this guy gets into his black Ferrari and just takes off, and they go through the streets of LA, around corners. It's shot from the tires perspective. It's just an amazing shot. He ends up going off the street and through this park, and like I said, he hits this old man. Um, and it might be a little dark to laugh at that, but the way it's shot's really funny. There's a scene in this chase where they do the old bit where they're carrying a plate glass window across the street, and he shifts up and hits this thing, and the guy goes rolling over the hood, and he's listening to this heavy metal music. And the next shot after he hits this guy is of him headbanging like gleefully, and that made me laugh so hard whenever I watched this. After he uses that body up, he ends up going into the body of this old man whose last name is Miller. And this is my favorite section of the movie because this guy, he's in the hospital and he's had a triple bypass or something like that. And so he's in bad health, but he still likes fast cars and listens to hard rock music and likes to live fast and is wide-eyed the entire time he does it. I really like that dynamic of taking this middle-aged, under-healthed character and like turning him into what that first character was. There's some really, really good scenes there, like in the diner where there's this loud music playing and the camera's slowly going across all the booths and It shows everybody looking this one direction, and it's the old man as he's got this boom box that he's stolen and he's eating steak, and that was just really funny to me. Um, Along the way, he also gets into the body of a female stripper, which that's kind of a cool scene. They're using these squibs because she gets shot like 15 times, like at fairly close range, and that's one thing today's movies are missing because there's like 15 squibs that go off all over her body, and it's Claudia Christian who plays her, and it looks so real. It's just like ripping her clothes and blood splattering everywhere. We really need that back in today's movies. CGI has ruined that enjoyment of action movies for me. He also goes into the bodies of a dog, Michael Norrie's boss, Michael Norrie's partner, and a presidential candidate. And you can always tell who the alien is because he's got this feature where he'll lick his lips, so like that. And so at one point, jumps into the body of the dog, and McLaughlin's character's like totally lost his lead. He can't figure out after it's left the body of Claudia Christian's character Brenda where it went. This dog is shown back away from him, snarling, and they got the dog to even stick his tongue out, while it's snarling, and that's some amazing acting from a dog. And I was like, that is a great touch. Another thing I liked about this movie, I noticed the second time I watched it, there are a ton of greens in this movie, which you don't see that a lot. So I watched it a third time with the commentary on with the director, and he said, well, he didn't say much about the greens other than the Cadillac that Brenda steals. They painted green for the green motif. He said that they made a conscious decision not to put any blues in the film because blues project comfort. But I noticed that like the police station's green, the import place where the bad guy's hanging out is green. There's this place where they have a shootout that's green. The street lights are green. Like in the Crow City of Angels where everything's yellow, the sodium lights. Well, here they give off this green glow, and even when they're like backlighting something, there might be a white wall in a building, but you can tell they're projecting green from backlit onto it because the walls will have this, kind of green glow to them. I thought that added an interesting look to the movie, and I've never seen another movie like that, and it stands out for me because of that. I really like the sense of dread in this movie because, like I said, they're shooting the first guy. They shoot several times. The Ferrari blows up, and they don't kill him. He's in the hospital until his body kind of expires. Claudia Christian's character, they just load full of bullets. It's really hard to kill these people, and it added to the sense of dread for me. I like the acting as well between the two leads. They have this really interesting dynamic where Kyle MacLachlan's character, he is an alien, like so. Our customs are a little alien to him. Like Michael Norrie's character invites him over to him and his wife's house in this great little scene where there's a lot of character development going on, and the daughter's not quite sure what to make of him. Like kids are always the first to know when something's a little bit off, and so Michael Norrie gives him a beer and he drinks it, and he's never had alcohol before, and so later on he wakes up with a headache, and so he gives him Alka-Seltzer, and instead of dropping it in the water, he just eats it, and he's like, ugh, like what is this? And later off, that's paid off by they give him some aspirin and he drops it in the water. Just little things like that were pretty cool. The secondary characters in this are really good, like Willis, the partner of Beck. I really liked his character. I don't understand why he was on the cover. He's, like I said, he's more of a side character, but he's a really good actor. He was in like Red Heat with Schwarzenegger. Richard Brooks plays another detective. I like him in everything. He was in an episode of Firefly that I really liked, and the aforementioned Crow City of Angels. His character's name's Sanchez, which is kind of weird, considering he's a black guy, but whatever. Danny Trejo has an appearance in this film. If you blink, you'll miss it. Like he's of course behind bars. I'd also be remiss if I didn't talk about the rock soundtrack. It's really great. A lot of lesser known bands who it appears like they were all on IRS records. Really good rock soundtrack, especially that beginning scene. I believe that band was called Shock Paris. They didn't really make it big, but like when he's shifting that Ferrari and they're playing that song On Your Feet, and he's sliding around corners. One of which is the underpass that the Terminator, a scene from the Terminator was filmed on whenever the Terminator crashes into that wall. The other really cool part of the movie, I thought, at one point, Richard Brooks' character Sanchez brings this flamethrower up to our two leads, and he's like, "Hey, look what I found!" And I told my wife at the time, I'm like, "That's going to come into play later in the movie. Anytime you see like a random plot device thrown in like that, that's going to be used later." And sure enough, it was, and it was glorious when it was used. There was very little I disliked. The only thing I can think of off the top of my head is I loved the alien parasite when it comes out of DeVries's mouth into Miller's at the beginning. And I love that whole scene because DeVries, when it's coming out of his mouth, that's a dummy because it's like it's a huge like alien slug that's coming out of him with like spider legs, and going into Miller's mouth, and he was a dummy too, but that dummy was done so well you can't tell that it was actually fake. It actually looks like a real man laying there in a hospital bed. I really loved that. But at the end of the movie, when McLaughlin's character comes sliding in there, being shot at and everything with that flamethrower, I thought they could have did a better job. Maybe they were running out of money at that point or time, but I thought the alien, it wasn't as impressive looking. And that's really the only dislike I have with this movie. Everything else I just absolutely loved. It's got the sci-fi action horror thing, which you get all three of those in a movie, and I'm gonna love it. So before I rate this, I'm gonna get into spoiler territory. So if you're listening to this, fast forward 45 seconds from here. So at the end of the movie, Michael Norrie's been shot fatally, like twice in the stomach, and he's laying in the hospital bed, and his wife and daughter are out in the hallway crying, and McLaughlin walks in, and he sees him, and he turns off his monitors that show his life support, and much like the bad character would open his mouth and the parasite would come out, he opens Nori's mouth and his mouth, and this he projects this light. And so the first time I saw this movie, I thought, oh, he's given Beck his life force. And he ends up falling to the floor dead, and Beck wakes up. And the wife and the daughter come in, and I thought that's kind of a neat little moment. But then the very last scene, the daughter's looking at him weird, like she's looking at Gallagher at that table. When he's an alien, and she knows something's not right about him. So anyway, I realized upon the second viewing, that's not what happened at all. The character of Beck ends up dying, and so Gallagher shuts off all of his vitals, he opens his mouth, and projects himself into Beck's body. And so when Beck wakes up, it's actually Gallagher in Beck's body. And when the wife and kid come in, the daughter has that intuition where she knows something's not right. Her dad's alive, but something's not right about him. And I think I like that ending a little more. It's the other one's a happy ending, but this one makes you really think about it. And I love endings like that. And so that just raises this movie up even another level to me. So it's time to rate The Hidden. And I can't believe it took me this long to discover this movie. Being that I love this genre and everything. IMDb, it's like a 7 or 7.1, which is criminally low. That's terrible. I thought, well, this is an 8, and then I really got thinking, this has everything I like in it, and there's only like one part of one scene that I'm like, ugh, that looks kind of weird. I'm gonna go 8 3/4 on this, 8.75. I really like this movie. I've owned the Blu-ray for a week, and I've watched it 3 times, and it's one like every time I watch it, I feel like I could let it roll through and just hit play again. I really love this movie. And when I do my favorite films of 1987, it's going to be so rough, guys, because I love Predator and I love RoboCop, but I love this as well. And among those three movies, it's like where do I put this? I'm going to try to talk to guys over on Macho Movie Madness to do a versus of like this versus I Come in Peace with Dolph Lundgren. A cop hunting an alien that looks like a person. But I love it. I can't recommend it enough. It's hard to find. I actually had to order the Blu-ray, so it's not on any streaming service whatsoever. But if you can see The Hidden, it's been one of my favorite movies I've reviewed. In these first 15 or so reviews I've done on this channel. So, guys, thanks once again for listening to me or just ramble on and on. Thanks for all your support. Thanks for listening. And as always, this is Andrew, and I'll see you down the line.